Basically, Folk Superlative came about because we were friends back in 2006 to 2008, and we paint, we draw, we do creative things, but we didn't study fine arts like most of us. So we basically attended exhibits together and we met each other there, and we wanted to do exhibits of our own. So we formed the group because we thought it would be easier to break into the scene as a group, because we weren't fine arts graduates and it was a kind of a silent requirement during that time. So Folk Superlative was how we helped ourselves to break into the scene by exhibiting together, forming group exhibits together, and then also taking on projects together. Like we would do illustration works for newspapers, for magazines, and then we would do murals for some furniture shops and design studios. And we would do exhibit collaborations with like Team Manila, Haima during those days. And yeah, that's how Folk Superlative came to be. In terms of new ways of seeing, I was talking to David, the one who wrote the exhibition notes, that it was a new way of seeing because we were all affected by the pandemic, and this exhibit is a result of us overcoming obstacles in order to produce this show. All of our works are affected by the show in terms of like where to get materials, how to get our works here, or how to get works of one of our members in Davao to Manila, and where to source materials, how to basically it was a challenge for us to come up with the show, and that produced a way for us to overcome these things by being creative about it. In 2 sets of work for the show, Bascon digitally translates older work and retools them as material for new, in a process that has less to do with reproducing or reflecting the material and more to do with reconstituting and repurposing imagery for new stories altogether. In one painting, he revisits a 2013 piece titled Shebang, only this time rendering its full image as a radial catalyst for the other things to implode from within. In Gems for Extra Culture, he forages through various studio material and a discontinued commission of nude studies, breathing new life into bits and pieces ritualistically removed and reconstructed into new collage paintings. He presents these paintings alongside their digital copies, not to iterate the images per se, but to transfigure them into a form where the imagined life-giving power of its gems are more permanently entombed. Medina's installation of shell-specific objects and images maps the artist's own feelings of resentment towards the collective decline of man's material connection to shells. With it, she draws a history of encounters with shells as accoutrements for forlorn design, naive to shells' true material history, and are ultimately just markers of our distance to a time, whenever that might have been, when the abundant material meant so much more. Zapanta's recent painting approach deliberately confuses the realms of essence and perception to engineer his own way of processing memory and desire. By treating the memory of the sea and certain perceptible elements within his room, texture, color, as discrete square units of visual memory that can be interchanged between parallel visual planes, he conjures a new way to visualize amidst remembering, and in effect be there without being there. That in an entertaining new way to stare at furniture. Through monotype prints produced during a residency on the German Baltic coast, 2018 to 2019, and screen prints produced during a residency in South Germany, 2014 to 2015, Cabildo reflects on how a creative process can be used to make sense of both her immediate and distant milieu. In an effort to understand the Baltic community's relationship with the sea, she studied rising sea levels and storm floods. While in Stuttgart, she reflected on the Filipino experience of disaster and typhoons. In both cases, she meditates on points where man and nature meet. Omandac explores similar questions on the relationship of man and nature, and investigates through the lens of horticulture man's ability to shape and form his natural environment, with the express intent of illustrating the limits of human intervention on plant life and posturing conservation as a mark of guilt. He begins via vegetative propagation, a process where a plant naturally reproduces an offshoot copy of itself at the point of cutting, only to impede the growth at the point of offshoot and instead simulate growth through a shaping of material, plaster, yarn, and paint, to produce half-plant, half-handiwork figures that haunt with the question, well, is this what you wanted?